Today I wanted to talk about the views on XLOV, gender, and the internalized homophobia when it comes to people looking at and looking into the group. As someone who's been openly queer for many years, I think since I was 10 maybe, and a very femme presenting man, I thought this topic was interesting. I have been thinking for a while about the fact that so many people will look at XLOV, how they dress, and the way that they perform masculinity in a way that isn't the norm, some would say. When they first debuted, XLOV was performing more, how would you say, societally, something a bit more masculine. Obviously, in K-pop, masculinity is sort of a slippery slope, I would say. A lot of groups in the more recent years have been more comfortable branching out into more feminine-like concepts. For example, wearing skirts, crop tops, I suppose, heels, just things that others would consider traditionally feminine. And when XLOV debuted, it was like, yeah, they wore skirts, but the way that they presented themselves wasn't overtly feminine. It was leaning on the more masculine side to what K-pop standards are. When One and Only came out, you could see them pushing it a bit more, which makes me sound like I'm saying that's a bad thing. I'm not. But they were pushing more into the area of femininity and being comfortable with being feminine as someone who is male presenting. Obviously, genderless group, but by average K-pop standards, that's not normal in any way. From there, obviously, we had the more, like, the longer hair, the dancing. The dancing was a big thing within the people who were on the outside of EVOLs. In the One and Only comeback, we had Rui wearing extensions or a wig to have hair around the bust area, and Umuti had hair around the shoulders, which is obviously a norm now for K-pop boy groups. But the outfits were certainly a lot more feminine leaning. And then obviously those people who were looking in on the outside who saw that and they were like, this isn't normal and I don't like it. And then moving even further, we got to Riz era, Beep era. Riz completely, like, not the other two in terms of femininity, out of the ballpark. For example, Umuti and Rui consistently wearing wigs, especially Rui, and the styling got a lot more traditionally feminine. There were skirts, just like a lot of like form-fitting clothing, accentuating clothing, ones that you don't really see male idols wearing, especially when it comes to the Beep stage outfits, which a lot of pink, Gyaru inspired, the wigs again, and also not to mention the nails. I forgot to mention that earlier, but the nails. It's all pushing very hard against how K-pop stans view masculinity and femininity, and the fact that you can be feminine as a guy, masculine as a woman, or just androgynous in general. But a lot of K-pop stans don't understand that, and obviously to me that's strange because I've been around queer culture for so many years that to me it's just like normal. It's a normal thing. But to K-pop stans, especially ones that have been around for a while, I would say I got into K-pop 2017 and my introduction to K-pop was through girl groups. I was a girl group stan for years on years and I started getting into boy groups a bit later. I would say 2020 maybe, but because I think this is more indicative of boy group stans, especially those who see girl groups as something that's not to their taste. Which, I mean, obviously, music preferences matter, but it depends on if you're saying you don't like that group based on their gender or not. And girl group stans who don't like boy groups, who love feminine concepts, but when they see a male presenting person performing that femininity, it feels gross to them. A few minutes ago, I watched a video, was by a reactor. This is not me trying to call them out, not that I have a platform to do that anyway, but it was an interesting reaction, to say the least, to XLOV, and I think it shows where a lot of people's heads are when it comes to seeing XLOV for the first time. This reactor, I don't want to say their name, not trying to sound preachy, but from what I gathered from their reaction, it felt like the entire time he was saying, like, this is not like how he views masculinity, and he was trying so hard to view it through that masculine lens that it got confusing to him and it made him uncomfortable. And obviously, if you're not surrounded by queer culture, you don't really see like hyperfemme men, ultra masculine women, androgynous people. If you're surrounded, for example, if you know queer people in your circle, but you're not used to seeing like the hyper displays of certain genders, I guess you could say, gender identities, you'd obviously be a bit confused. And I'm not saying that that makes him homophobic or it makes anyone homophobic by being uncomfortable and confused by someone that you don't understand, but I think it also just shows where people's heads are at when it comes to identity. Seeing things that have to be in a box to them, things that have to be in that box, and if it isn't in that box, it makes them uncomfortable. Another thing I wanted to touch on was the view from certain group stands towards XLOV. I am talking about boy group stands in this scenario. I have not seen many girl group stands discussing XLOV as many as I see boy group stands, but I think that might be because I'm surrounded by more boy group stands now than I was back then. But my examples I'm going to give are Stray Kids fans, ATEEZ fans, and TXT fans. Obviously, this counts for other boy groups as well, but these have been the main groups which I've seen a lot of stuff said about. Those fans discussing XLOV. For example, take for instance Songhwa from ATEEZ, someone who performs masculinity in a more feminine way. Songhwa is self-admitted to love androgynous fashion, as well as Hongjun. Both of them have talked about how they view fashion, the fashion choices that they enjoy. Songhwa and Hongjun both wearing skirts, heels, painting their nails, having longer hair, just performing what is traditionally feminine. On that same note, Felix from Stray Kids. Felix is someone who has been well known in the Stray Kids fandom to be more like a pretty boy. He's very pretty, he has nice long blonde hair, soft features, and he dresses in a more traditionally feminine way. And to those people, they see that as fine because it is still in a gender binary. But because XLOV performs genderless, a genderless concept, genderless views on fashion, dance, music, it's strange to them and it pushes them too far. And to them, it just feels strange and uncomfortable, and it pushes from what they're used to. Now, obviously, another point I'd like to bring up is the most recent P1 Harmony comeback teasers. We had Jongseob and Seoul in a more traditionally feminine look. Jongseob, who's been known for a long time now to be more androgynous looking. So Jongseob looks more feminine presenting, androgynous. And Seoul has been like that for years now. Seoul has been very androgynous dressing. But for the most recent P1 Harmony teasers, I've seen a lot of comments, mostly on TikTok because TikTok K-pop fans, they kind of scare me a little. But there was a video of Jongseob, I'll probably put it on the screen, well, pictures of Jongseob with longer hair, nails done, like just looking very pretty. Many of the comments that I've seen have said stuff like, no, I don't want them to have the XLOV concept, I don't want them to. And then obviously a creator will reply and say, why? ? And then this person will probably respond with, I mean, I like their music, but I don't like the way that they look. And I think that's very common within the K-pop fandom, the discomfort around performing anything that isn't societal standards. The last topic I want to discuss is queerness in K-pop. We should all know by now that a lot of our own K-pop idols are queer. A lot of people don't want to see it that way, but not everyone that you like, everyone that you stan is going to be straight, because that's not how the world works. Some of the examples of this are Bane from SB, Coconut from XG, and I would say potentially Eves from Luna, Chu from Luna, and now XLOV. But when it comes to these groups, people see queerness as a thing to fetishize, to look at and go, that's hot. Like, oh, imagine. But as soon as someone openly presents queerness, they don't like it. It's not something that they enjoy because it ruins that that fantasy for them. It makes them uncomfortable, and it means that potentially the idols that they do like, that perhaps they find incredibly attractive, wouldn't ever be into them, which I think is a given. We don't know these people. We don't know how they view other people. We don't know who they like, what they like. But as soon as it pushes out of their own boundaries of how they view queerness, how they view femininity, masculinity, gender roles, it makes people uncomfortable. And I think finally there is a push in K-pop that you can look a certain way, be a certain way, and you shouldn't be judged for it, because guess what? That makes us human. We're all human. Anyway, thank you for coming to my yap session. This is going to be short because I don't talk and I don't like hearing myself talk. Thank you.